Hello to you, my hairy-nosed wombats, and happy Passover. It is Passover here now in Australia. Happy Passover to all of those who are celebrating. Um, yeah, I was going to come on and tell a funny story about one of the various things that I'd learnt in studying the Exodus and Passover in terms of all the history of that, some of the insane elements to particularly the ways the Greeks told the story, the Hellenistic Egyptians told the story. Um, but there's been this thing that's been going through my head again and again over the last couple of weeks since going back into the Exodus story. So I'm going to do a bit of a musing, a bit of a reflection on that, which is this is how the story starts. So the story starts in Exodus. It tells who were the sons of Jacob, and then it starts with this. Now, a king came to power, and he did not know who Joseph was. And that's how we get the start of the story. From that, we get the Hebrews put into slavery. We get them being forced to build cities. We get them being oppressed, being then having the firstborn sons killed. Uh, so we have that story. We have that story, and that's how that starts by forgetting history. And I don't know whether it's because of things that have been making the news lately, whether it's Trump's restoring sanity, I think, to American history, or whatever his executive order was called, where he said that you, at least in national museums and national parks, you can't tell any sort of story that paints the history of any American in a bad light. You can't talk about the oppression or the uh, any of the issues in the past. And there's an old saying from history which says that those who fail to remember the lessons of history are doomed to repeat them. And I mean, it proves true time and time again. When we stop telling our history or we stop telling certain parts of our history, we have a tendency of repeating them. And it's largely because if we forget how we got there in the first place, right? If we forget the struggle it takes to get to here, or if we forget how bad things happened in the past, what was used to justify it, what was used to get to that place where that was seen to be okay. If we forget all of that, then it's so easy to repeat those mistakes. It's so easy to repeat all of that again. And I think that's what's been happening in recent times. We tell stories of the end of slavery, and we tell it in regards to the abolitionists and how wonderful the abolitionists were and how all of them did wonderful things. But we don't talk about the ones necessarily that fought against that or who justified it in differing ways. We don't listen to why it was justified for so long. We listen to why they argued that it should end. And the same with 1940s Germany history. We tend to focus on people like Bonhoeffer rather than all of them who stood by and didn't stop it happening. Um, we tend to focus on those who fought against it, not those who either stood by or who found ways or how they went about justifying it to the public. And it's so easy to do. And, it tends to come down to things like fear. When people are afraid, it's easy to point to someone or something and go, they're the people that you should be afraid of. It's easy to find a scapegoat. It's easy to find a group who are seemingly to blame. And it's easy to justify taking away their rights or treating them badly or violence in many cases against them. And it's so easy to do that when you don't remember how it happened before. And there is always this tendency of painting ourselves as the good guys, right? There's always going to be that. Even when we're telling stories in churches or the biblical stories, we never paint ourselves as the bad guy. Like going back to the Exodus, you will never hear a church talking about how we're Pharaoh, right? We're never Pharaoh. We're always the Israelites. We're always Moses, leading them across the Red Sea. We're always the ones with the faith and fighting the oppression. We're never the ones doing the oppressing, right? That's never us in the story. We're not those guys. We're the good guys. When you tell the story of David and Goliath, it's always we're David, we're the little ones fighting against the big, strong Goliaths in our lives. We're never Goliath. We're never the Pharisees who are judging Jesus and his disciples or the people they hang out with. We're always Jesus who is loving and accepting, and we're always that guy. We're always the good guy. We're never the bad guy in the story. We're never Pilate. We're never Caiaphas. We're never those guys. We're always the good guy. And that's the comfortable way to tell history. That's the comfortable way to engage with history, is to go, well, we did the right thing. Or we were justified in some way to do that. But sometimes sitting there and going, there's that meme from Mitchell and I want to say Mitchell and Webb TV show. It's definitely David Mitchell in it, who sort of goes, looking around being the Nazi and go, oh, are we the bad guys? Like the skulls on our thing. So that's sort of the thing of, oh, we never tell ourselves that we're the bad guys in this story. And even when we tell history, we tend to wipe out the bits where we don't look good, right? Where we've done the wrong thing. Even if we were the good guys overall, we never tell about how we did bad things in doing the right thing. It's always justified. So I think that there is this element to which we need to start looking at our history. I think so often we forget history, and it's easy to do, and it's sometimes difficult to look at and sometimes uncomfortable, and it's sometimes that we just don't want to do it. I mean, I sit in that spot sometimes, where you're sort of going, yeah, no, I'm where I would not have been the bad guy. I'd like to think of myself as someone who would have stood up. I would have been an abolitionist. I would have been, but a part of me knows that, yeah, no, there was probably, yeah, would I have stood up? Would I have stood for things? Would I have had the courage to do that where that might have cost me things in my life, potentially my own life in some of those situations? Would I have done that, or would have I just let things happen? I wasn't doing them. If I'm not doing it myself, would I have just been okay with other people doing things? Would I have not said something? And I think we all don't want to sit with that because it's uncomfortable, and we like to think of ourselves as that other side of history, on the right side of history. And sometimes we are, sometimes we're not, and that's, I don't want to say it's okay, but it is what it is. We're going to be on the wrong side of history sometimes, and we're going to be on the right side of history sometimes. I think standing up for what you believe in is a useful part, and I think also learning from the mistakes of history makes a big place for us to start and go, oh, okay, this is how this happened in the past. This is how people justified it in the past. So maybe we can learn from that so that people can't use those same things. People have used faith, they've used fear, they've used all sorts of ways to scapegoat people. And when you go through looking through history, it's the same story again and again. We need to, when we look at the witch hunts, oh, they're coming for the children. They want to drink the children's blood. They want to blah 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 blah. And then you look at today's things, and you're like, that seems to be the same thing that they're saying about certain people. And it was also the same thing, coincidentally, they said about the early Christians. We do that. We go, oh, they're coming for us. They're invading us. We're going to be overwhelmed by X people. That was put forward in the Middle Ages to justify the Crusades. We tell these stories. Oh, they're taking all the money. They have all the money. They're controlling the banks. They're controlling the. I mean, we've heard that one enough. They control the media. They control the. That gets told a bunch throughout history, more so than you would think. And again, these same things are used to justify. And I hear them again and again in our own things today. And it's interesting that we don't come up with new stories. We just find different people to blame for them. Anyway, that's my musing. And hopefully you will all have a wonderful Passover season. And I look forward to this week. We're going to be going into elements of Holy Week, which I'm really looking forward to sort of giving you some ideas about some of the events of that week and how they existed within their own time. Some of the things that are difficult to necessarily engage with in our own time frame. Some things are really, really different in first century Judaism and first century Jerusalem. And I think that there's a lot there that we can go through. We'll look at things like the cleansing of the temple. Tomorrow I'm going to post, there are going to be some older ones that I've done before, but I liked them, so I'm going to repost them, about Palm Sunday. And then I'll probably be looking into, the plan is to look into the people involved in the trial and whether the trial was suitable. We'll also look into the Last Supper, I think. That was the other one on my list. So hopefully I'll get to all of that. Hopefully nothing goes badly wrong this week, as has happened in previous weeks where I've tried to do these things. But we have a plan. I have a plan, and I'm going to try and stick to it. So if that all sounds interesting, follow along, all of that. Yeah, hope to see you there. Catch you all